Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased to welcome you and welcome our distinguished speakers to today's Making Cities Resilient 2030 Global Initiative webinar. It is a series of webinars, and this webinar is the next in this series of 2023 Global Initiative Series. And the name of the webinar is Capacity Building Models and Tools to Strengthen Cities Resilience in Asia and the Pacific. My name is Armen Rostomyan, and I will moderate today's webinar. This webinar is organized by the Regional Resource Center for Asia and Pacific of the Asian Institute of Technology in collaboration with United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, with International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, Local Government for Sustainability, United Cities and Local Governments, and the Asian Disaster Preparedness Center. The purpose of the webinar is to help our participants to learn more about practical applications, cities and countries' resilience building models, tools, methodologies, as well as various capacity building approaches and capacity building methodologies that are used by different partner organizations who are part of Making Cities Resilient 2030 initiative. We have today 8 distinguished speakers at this webinar from our partner organizations, and as well as we have government representatives who will share their practical field experiences and best practices. So before introducing our distinguished speakers, please let me briefly inform you about some housekeeping rules for this webinar. The webinar will start with a keynote address by the RRCAP director, followed by presentations from 8 distinguished speakers. Each presentation will be about 6-7 minutes. Then we'll have about 15 minutes of questions and answer session in which all your questions will be directed to our speakers for their input and to answer to your questions. After introducing each speakers, their short biographies will be posted in the chat box, so you can follow up and read it. Please kindly use the question and answer function. It is on below right corner of your screen to type your questions. So all your questions you provide to us will be directed and forwarded to our distinguished speakers to answer to your questions. So please use question and answer functions to post all your questions, comments. Also, please post if you want to share any links relevant to this webinar. Please also use that link to provide any links. Also, please be informed that the webinar is going to be recorded, and the recorded version of the webinar will be uploaded in a YouTube channel. Also, it will be available through Regional Resource Center for Asia Pacific website, as well through AP Plat website. All these links to AP Plat website and RRCAP website will be posted in the chat box that you can have and access. After question and answer session, we'll ask you to complete a short online post-event evaluation form. It is very short. It will take 1 or 2 minutes for you to complete it, and we would greatly appreciate if you take your time at the end of the webinar to complete the form, because we really value your feedback and we'll use it for planning our upcoming events and webinars. And the link to access this evaluation form also will be posted in the chat box that you can click and complete the form. With this in mind, I would like to invite our first speaker. It's a pleasure to invite Dr. Gilberto Borognan, who is the director of the Regional Resource Center for Asia and Pacific of Asian Institute of Technology. Dr. Gilberto, the floor is yours.
Dear partners, Your Excellencies, respected mayors, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, good evening, and good morning. Good day to all. On behalf of the Regional Resource Center for Asia and the Pacific of the Asian Institute of Technology, I am delighted to welcome you to this joint webinar on capacity building models and tools to strengthen cities' resilience in Asia and the Pacific, as part of the Making Cities Resilient 2030 initiative in close collaboration with United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, Local Governments for Sustainability, United Cities and Local Governments, the Asian Disaster Preparedness Center. I would like to express my gratitude to the Ministry of the Environment, the Government of Japan. Presence here, we have Yoshida-san, for your support and their support, continuous support, and fruitful cooperation with EIT RRCAP. Let me say a few words about EIT RRCAP for those who may not be familiar with us. Our center is one of the outreach centers of the Asian Institute of Technology, working to bridge the science policy gap for sound, sustainable development processes and policies at national and regional levels in the Asia and Pacific region. We complement EIT's research, education, and additional capacity building activities towards the achievement of its EIT mission. For more than 3 decades since RCAP's establishment, we are fortunate to have built trusted relationships and partners with key stakeholders across the region and beyond who share in our vision. Why is building cities' resilience to climate change and disaster risk so important to address now? As you are well aware, urbanization is taking place at unprecedented rate. Cities are arguably the epicenters of vulnerability to disaster risk due to the density of their population and built infrastructure and other economic assets that concentrate in them. Cities are often located along coast, rivers, and seismic areas. Unfortunately, urban planning and development in most cities has inadequately prepared them to face the impacts of both climate-related and natural hazards, such as the rising sea levels, floods, and earthquakes. Cities indeed are therefore at the front lines of risk reduction. The MCR 2030 campaign was launched in 2021 with a global partnership of actors and experts with incidents in urban resilience, disaster risk reduction, climate action, and the SDGs. The initiative provides a resilience roadmap to cities to define their commitments over time, tools and references to stakeholders with experience to foster networking and peer-to-peer exchange of knowledge and information to build resilience to climate and disaster risk. Since 2016, our team at the EIT RCAP has been actively supporting cities in Asia and the Pacific region via training programs and initiatives that promote climate and disaster risk assessment and understanding to increase local resilience. We have engaged over 20 cities from 16 countries in the region to conduct self-assessment to help jumpstart city resilience action plans and strategies. We have engaged over 140 city officials and conducted trainer-of-trainer workshop with over 30 specialists from regional and national training institutions. We also envisage that this webinar will also help you better understand the MCR 2030 initiative inspire new partnerships, and the uptake of proven methodologies and approaches for the multi-stakeholder engagement in urban, climate, and disaster risk reduction. In this regard, an integrated approach to building resilience to both climate change and disaster risk can benefit from cities' availability to leverage existing efforts. From EIT RSAP perspective, I would like to welcome and express our full commitment and support and engagement with the MCR 2030 initiative. We are looking forward to working with all partners to continue supporting the cities in the Asia Pacific region. I would like to thank our key partners, IFRC, ECLE, UCLG, EDPC, and the Ministry of Environment Japan, and all our distinguished speakers for their contribution and support and trust in EIT-RRCAP to host this joint webinar. I hope that today's session will pave the road for a series of similar thematic webinars and future discussions, joint regional training programs, and other efforts in 2023 onwards, along with partners to and beyond, focusing on MCR 2030 initiative key thematic areas and best practices and knowledge sharing. Lastly, I would like to take this opportunity to share that EIT RRCAP has recently developed 2 e-learning videos. The first one is increasing coherence in climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction. And second e-learning video is resilience building through sustainable waste and resource management as a contribution to the Asia Pacific Adaptation Information Platform, or EP-PLAT, thanks to the support and collaboration of the Ministry of the Environment of Japan and the Institute for Global Environmental Strategies. The videos will be made available via the EP-PLAT website, and we will be happy to circulate these e-learning videos via email. I warmly welcome you again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Borognan. Thank you for your welcome speech and highlighting the importance of strengthening cities' resilience in the region of Asia Pacific and globally. And to deliver next keynote speech, I would like to invite Ms. Sunisa Sodrak. Ms. Sodrak, she is Associate Program Management Officer at the Regional Office for Asia and the Pacific of the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. The regional office is based in Bangkok, Thailand. Sunisa, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Armin. Yuko Yoshida-san, Deputy Director of Climate Change Adaptation, Ministry of Environment, Japan. Dr. Gilberto Borongan, Director of Asian Institute of Technology, Regional Resource Center for Asia and Pacific. Esteemed colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Sunisa Sudrak. Apart from Associate Management Officer, I also making city resilience focal point for Asia and the Pacific region. On behalf of Mr. Marco Tascano Rivalta, the head of UNDR Regional Office for Asia and the Pacific. So we would like to thank you for this opportunity to be part of this webinar and would like to extend our gratitude to Ministry of Environment Japan for your support. Also the Asian Institute of Technologies, Regional Resource Center for Asia and the Pacific for your leadership in co-organizing this webinar. So after all, as we know, cities and municipalities are where disasters are most acutely felt, and in line with the growing trend over 20 years and more expensive and more disaster. So cities have felt that brunt of this impact, and this is at the local level where risk is built and must be addressed. And climate change is also one of the large drivers of risks. But urbanization and also increasing of population density can also lead to the creation of new risks, especially when urbanization is poorly planned and occurring in context of widespread poverty and also inequality. And as we see that the COVID-19 pandemic is also a clear example that it has impact on like urban area, especially vulnerable population, including the poor, migrants, and also the elderly. So in order to address this urban resilience issue, so we encourage city and also local government from around the world to join the Making City Resilience 2030 initiatives. This is a global collaboration that it supports the local government around the world to strengthening their climate and also disaster resilience. And it aims that we won't leave no municipality behind in this ambition. So as Dr. Gilberto explained about MCR, so MCR 2030 breaks this down into 3 simple stages of the and offer city guidance to and support provided by UNDR and also initiative partners to support city move along a resilience roadmap, which start with the city understand their risks and then planning against them, and also finally implement measures to address and respond to them. So at the heart of the MCR is the cooperation, the intention to create opportunities for demand and supply. This will meet through initiative tailored to local needs, and it embodies that Sendai principle that disaster risk reduction is also shared responsibility across all stakeholders. So as because the city is the best teacher, so we have Resilience Hub, which are the local authorities that have established the track record in this as a risk reduction and also resilience. So they are committed to support and mentor other MCR 2030 cities. And as of now, we have around 21 resilience hubs around the world, which 2 of them are located in Asian Pacific regions, namely Incheon from South Korea and also Makati from the Philippines. So today is a good opportunity for experience sharing on tools and resources, which MCR 2030 Regional Coordinating Committee members will present to you today, as well as we will hear from Baguio City of the Philippines to share experience on their resilience roadmap. And last but not least is that what we have learned from the Sendai Framework Midterm Review Report. Under Priority 1, it's mentioned that the investment is required in training and education for entities beyond this traditional and commonly mandate to lead disaster risk reduction, to include all sectors and domains. So we hope that by the end of this webinar, you will see a lot of tools and also resources which can support local government to enhance capacity to building a more resilient, sustainable, inclusive, and safer urban future. So thank you very much for being here today. Over back to you, Ahmed.
Thank you very much, Sunisa, and thank you for a little bit guiding us through the key trends in urban risk reduction and urban resilience, as well as highlighting the importance of city and local government's role in addressing disaster risk reduction, the risk in disaster risks and climate change risks. So thank you very much. And now it's a pleasure to invite our next keynote speaker, Dr. Yuko Yoshida. Dr. Yoshida is the Deputy Director of Climate Change Adaptation Office, Global Environment Bureau of the Ministry of Environment of Japan. Dr. Yoshida, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, San. It's public holiday in Japan, so I'm out now. So it's a bit loud around. So I'm really sorry for that. I'm trying to speak louder. Yeah, and then thank you very much. And then good afternoon, the dear participants. And I'm pleased to say a few words to introduce this important event on behalf of the Ministry of the Environment, Japan. As a sponsoring partner, it's my honor to be part of this very important webinar, along with a consortium of relevant institutions working in Asia Pacific region. I'm pleased to see the efforts continue towards achieving the objectives of the Making Cities Resilient 2030 campaign. Incredibly, over half of humanity already lives in urban settings, and this figure is projected to rise to 2/3 by 2050. The need for action in cities to advance sustainable development, and climate change and disaster risk resilience can no longer be overlooked. The impact of COVID-19 was also predominantly urban, with nearly 19% of the people affected and major socio-economic disruption caused in cities. The pandemic exposed the soft underbelly of our urban development, governance, and risk management systems. Crises are no longer standalone or episodic events. Their wide-ranging impacts and interconnected nature pose significant socio-economic challenges, lingering long beyond a given event. The risks are heightened, especially among interdependent sectors of urban development. To name a few, nearly 84% of the fastest growing cities face extreme climate and disaster risks, with a vast majority of these in Asia and Africa. High-risk cities are mostly in challenging socio-economic development contexts like least developed countries, small island developing states, and other low-income countries that face considerable governance, capacity, and resource constraints. In cities, crises and risks of all types tend to converge and become constrained. The urbanization of risks is exacerbated by pre-existing structural issues such as poverty, inequality, migration, and informality. In fact, the World Bank projects that the COVID-19 pandemic may have pushed an additional 88 million to 115 million people into extreme poverty in 2020. Their analysis indicates that these new poor will be more urban than so-called chronic poor populations, such as more engaged in informal services and living congested urban settings. Local governments are at the forefront of disaster response and a key actor across the risk management cycle. Building resilient cities means taking proactive action towards understanding risks and planning to prevent it, as well as learning how to be both flexible and agile to prepare, respond, and recover from disasters. I would like to share with you 5 needs and strategic priorities for urban resilience building for you to explore further during this webinar. First, we need to give more focus to cities in neglected geographies with the greatest capacity gaps, such as those in small, medium, and transitioning economies and those in fragile contexts. The MCR 2030 Global Initiative has made available easy and fast tools such as the Quick Risk Estimation tool and the Disaster Resilience Scorecard for cities. Second, we need to strengthen urban governance by connecting national and municipal policies and implementation plans, and stepping up engagement with key interest groups to ensure collective action. This will improve decision-making, foster participation, and overcome traditional barriers to address existing risks and prevent new ones. Third, we need to ensure that urban development and services address the specific needs and vulnerabilities of marginalized groups in urban communities. This will include improving their access to services such as health and education while addressing the circumstances that increase their exposure and vulnerability to small-scale localized incidents and as the ever-growing risks of everyday life. Fourth, we need to the MCR 2030 Global Initiatives and its partners to work together to augment the capacities in less resourced cities to manage multidimensional risks through well-financed, risk-informed urban development planning and investments. This includes leveraging public and private finance to meet development and resilience building needs at the city level, access to actionable risk information, including effective end-to-end focus and early warnings. finally, we need more innovation for a future of resilient cities. Recognizing the dynamic and evolving needs of cities, the potential of innovative and digital technologies such as modeling and forecasting, urban planning, and crisis management systems can be further optimized with emerging technologies. All in all, country level and city level decision makers need to focus energies collectively and embrace innovation if we truly want resilient cities for all urban dwellers. Climate change, adaptive and disaster risk resilient building measures are crucial in our region. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe by participating in this webinar, we are in the right place at the right time. Together, let us accelerate the exchange of ideas on these important thematic areas and share experiences, lessons learned, and good practices. I'm confident you will find new ideas, fresh energy, and novel partnerships to sustain your efforts in further strengthening the resilience of our cities to climate change and disasters in Asia and the Pacific region. I wish you all a very successful webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yoshida, for setting a scene and highlighting some important and priority needs and issues that cities are facing to strengthen their resilience to climate and disaster risks, as well as for your highlights on and the vision on how these cities how these issues can be addressed. I think you set very good scenes for our next webinar speakers, who I'm more than sure can expand these points for discussion and provide more information, best practices, models and tools they used in strengthening, in building capacities using different methodologies to address cities' resilience issues. Thank you very much. With that in mind, I would the next presentation, I want to invite 3 presenters because their bits of presentations are interconnected. They are linked with each other, and you already know Dr. Sunisa Sodrak. Dr. Sunisa Sodrak, she will speak about Making Cities Resilient 2030 global campaign and how cities use the methodologies and tools of this global initiative to strengthen their resilience to climate and disaster risk. It will be followed by Dr. Antoinette Anaban, who designed some of these tools for the MCR 2030 campaign, and then we will have a practical application of these tools and experience shared by our next speaker, who is Dr. Antoinette Anaban, who works with the government of city of Baguio in Philippines. So she will provide practical application and of all these tools, methodologies and approaches in the field level, in the city level in Philippines. So please, the floor is yours, and welcome to this webinar. Sunisa, would you like to start?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I cannot find where to unmute myself. Sorry. Yeah, first of all, like before we are going to into like each agency's tools and resources under MCR initiative. So let me start with what MCR or Making City Resilience is and how it helps local government to build resilience at local level. So I also have my co-presenter, which is Sylvie Elosa. She is also DR specialist at independent consultant. So start with what MCR is. First of all, MCR, or Making City Resilient, it was an initiative that built from Making City Resilience from 2010 in 2020. But at that time, we focusing on create awareness raising for the local government, how to mainstream DRR into their local DRR action plan and policy. But at that time, we thought that, well, just to build to raise awareness might not enough for today. So that's why Making City Resilience initiative start in 2021 that aims to bring that, first of all, like the resilience roadmap that to support the local government, like to understand where they are and what action that they should do to build resilience. And because like some of the local government, sometimes they don't know like where to start. Sometimes like it is necessary to have the global partnership and also regional network like we are here today, and the governance structure that help or supporting them like to access to the tools and also resources more easily, as well as like to connect with other city to learn from each city that might have similar disaster, or they might have like innovative idea that they could share like to other cities. And also like MCRs, we also have tools that call online dashboard, which is like the closed platform that help local government to know where they are, to monitor their progress, and also to connect with other cities and use as a marketplace to connect with other partners. So the resilience roadmap under MCR that we divide city into 3 different groups, as I mentioned before, like the city state A, that might be like city that they start understanding and start awareness that on urban resilience. So under this group, the awareness raising is the key activities. So, and also like the second group we call city state B, that city can plan better. Well, for them, they might have their DRR plan in place, but they might want to improve their risk analysis. They might want to include like other elements or others like diagnostic skill for planning. And then last but not least is the city state C, or city implement better, that increase that they might like focusing on different aspects of the urban resilience. That might be like a nature-based solution, that might be ensure that resilient infrastructure, for example. So the overall approach for MCI is that we have the concept that we call as the 10 essential for making city resilience, just to help city to understand where they are, what action that they should take, and then once they know what they know, like what is the action that they should take, there is tools we call the scorecard assessment, the resilience scorecard assessment, that help them to understand and also like assess themselves on the status of resilience building of their cities. So once they use tools, so they can use the result of this assessment to identify gap and also like address the prioritized and action to develop the DRR strategy action plan and start implementing to reduce disaster risks and also build resilience. So these are like the 10 essential for making city resilience, which is the guideline that we divide into 3 groups. Like first of all, it's focusing on city governance, that the local government need to understand like, well, which organization they're working on DRR, on urban resilience. And also they need to have like a better risk assessment. They need to have a budget or financial for this risk analysis. So the second group is focusing on integrated planning. For example, on the good urban planning or nature-based solution involvement, or like strengthening institution capacity, the inclusion of different groups, and also like the resilient infrastructure. And the last group is focusing on response planning, that well, if our city have the effective the disaster response or not, or like in case of recovery and build back better. So from that 10 essential, there is a tool that I mentioned, like in the previous slide, the disaster resilience scorecard, which is the tools that support disaster risk reduction and resilience planning for the local government. So it's developed in 2017 by AECOM, IBM, and also UNDRR. And from here, you see that the disaster resilience scorecard, we have two versions, the basic version, and also like the detailed version. So how it's work, like there is a question that local government like need to take lead and gather other stakeholder in their cities and just stick together and answer like questions so that they can understand like priority area, which area that they want to focus or which area that they need to prioritize. So apart from this resilience scorecard, we also have different addendum as you see below that focusing on different issues like public health, food system, cultural heritage, inclusion of person with disability, and also like the newly launched on this other displacement that Sylvie will explain to you more. So how it's work, how it look like. This is the result of the resilience scorecard. You can see like the gray area is the maximum score of each essential because the scorecard based on the 10 essential. The blue area is the score that city received the scoring. So you can see from here like essential 3 focusing on budget for risk assessment is very prioritized for this city, or on E7, which is focusing on the inclusion of different groups. So like the city, the local government can use this like as a baseline or basement, like to start prioritize and then developing the plan. So apart from this, like I would like to pass to pass to my colleague Sylvie to explain more on like the newly launched of the addendum, and then it will follow by Antoinette, like that from Baguio City, that she will also explain like how like the city use the scorecard and then what is the next step. So Sylvie, over to you, please.
Very much, Sunisa. So we're going to take a step back slightly. We're going to go into one particular issue that for which we have developed an addendum. So that's like an annex to the scorecard. So when a city wants to assess how it's doing in terms of resilience on a particular issue, there are addendums that UNDRR has developed. And there is one that we are launching now that is on disaster displacement. But to take a step back, why do municipalities need to address displacement? Well, it's a very common disaster impact, and that is why the Sendai framework calls for action on reducing displacement risks and the risks that are associated with being displaced. So most disaster displacement occurs within countries in municipalities, and so they might affect people in your own municipality that are displaced within the municipality, or they might be displaced to another municipality, or your city might receive people from another municipality. So then the Sendai framework calls for the need to reduce displacement risk so that we can avoid displacement. And when it is not avoided, to ensure that people that are displaced are protected, and to empower them to rebuild their own lives. With the right support, displaced people are very able and willing to rebuild their lives. And I just wanted to point out that people may be displaced multiple times for various reasons because displacement itself increases vulnerability. May I have the next slide? Thank you, Sunisa. So for that reason, UNDRR commissioned the Norwegian Refugee Council to develop an addendum to the scorecard, which is generally for assessing resilience, so that cities can assess their disaster displacement resilience. And it follows the same format as the scorecard. So it has many questions, 39 questions, and those respond to the 10 essentials of the scorecard. Then there are indicators, and so you can rate how well your city is prepared, what policies you have in place, how much you have involved the various stakeholders that need to be involved. And the emphasis is on planning, on preparedness, and on finding durable solutions. So that means finding a way for displaced people to no longer have any needs related to their displacement. It includes, just like the scorecard, an Excel tool so that you can input your answers, and then it provides a graphic like the one that Sunisa showed you before I started speaking. So if you are interested in applying the addendum in your own city, perhaps you have already done the scorecard, so then you'd like to follow up with something more specific on displacement, please contact Sunisa. May I have the next slide? Thank you. I just wanted to let you know that there are other tools related to this. If your city is interested in addressing disaster displacement, you want to be prepared. And so the UNDRR has the Words into Action series, and there is a guide on disaster displacement. There is also a checklist. And there is a disaster displacement e-learning tool. So all of these tools are available. May I have the next slide, please? On UNDRR's website, you see it there in orange, the Words into Action Guidelines Disaster Displacement. You can go there to see the guide, the Words into Action guide, and the checklist. It's available in various languages. And then there's also the e-learning course, which is available on Kaya Connects and on Disaster Ready. And the scorecard addendum that I've just been describing to you, please reach out to Sunisa for that one. And we would be happy to support you if you want to take that on. Thank you very much.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our host, to our co-speakers, our guests, and participants. So allow me to share with you our experience on the Making Cities Resilient for the city of Baguio. But before anything else, I would like to share with you an overview of the setting, the disaster setting of the city of Baguio. So basically, the Philippines is within the Pacific Ring of Fire, and we have 300 volcanoes with more than 20 active volcanoes, and daily we experience 20 earthquakes. And also the Philippines here is located within the Pacific Typhoon Belt, which we experience 20 typhoons annually. And the Philippines is also dubbed as the exporter of typhoons. So in the city of Baguio, we have these natural hazards. We have landslides, we have floods, we have earthquakes, we have sinkholes, we have forest fires. At the adjacent local government of the city of Baguio, and we experience urban heat island. So the city of Baguio is actually known as the summer capital of the Philippines because of its cold climate, but now we experience a bit warmer already, not as cold as before. And we believe that these hazards in the city of Baguio can be exacerbated by the climate change, which in terms of frequency and in terms of severity. And so in 2021, the city joined the MCR 2030. So in our quest to look at the indicators, to research on indicators online, we encountered this Making Cities Resilient accidentally, and that we became interested in it because this MCR actually contains indicators which we can use in the local government. And so we signified our interest to join the MCR 2030 campaign, and we were issued the certificate of commitment in the last quarter of 2021, which contains states that the city strives to become inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable by 2030, and commits to reducing disaster and climate risk, and continue to improve sustainability by taking actions to enhance resilience. But when we have this, we actually do not know where to start. And so we keep researching, we keep reading online how we start this MCR 2030 until we had this our own self-assessment of this. And based on the 3 stages, we generally belong to stage C. We are in stage C, which says implement better. However, based on further study on this, we realized that we still lack something in stage A and stage B, which are the one in the red. So we do not have yet this comprehensive awareness of the risk in the city of Baguio, and we do not have yet this risk-informed plans that we want to implement in stage C. And so in 2022, we are happy that we are invited by UNDRR in Incheon, South Korea. Sunisa was there. They introduced to us this MCR, this disaster resilience scorecard, and that we were able to accomplish comprehensively because they provided us with 10 slots for 10 participants. Unfortunately, there were one of us backed out, so only 9 of us went there. But the team of 9 people were actually composed of key offices, key departments of the local government that represents inclusivity, social sector, health sector, environment sector, infrastructure sector. And so we are actually a team of we are a composite team of the city of Baguio attended this. And we had this preliminary assessment, which we are actually with a score of 81 out of 141, or equivalent of 60.3% out of 100%. So we realized, we felt bad about this result. However, it also opened our realization that we will not only look at where we are now, but we will be able to identify what else are yet to be done in the coming years. So there we identified the gaps. So these are actually the result of the essentials, because the MCR is composed of 10 essentials. And we highlighted the top 3 lowest. So we are very low in terms of essential 10, which is expedite recovery and build back better. We are also very low in organizing for resilience. We are very low in strengthening institutional capacity for resilience. And of course, with the rest, we are still low compared to what we really want the city to become. Okay, so from there, we take off from there, and that we were able to, when we returned from South Korea, we were able to make some actions on based on the scorecards that we had. So the first one, we presented this disaster resilience scorecard and roadmap to our management committee, because we realized that there is a seeming low buy-in of our local officials on disaster risk reduction and management, and that what we thought of is we need to inform them of this scorecard so that we will be able to gain their support. So we presented this to our management committee, headed by our city mayor and membered by heads of the departments. I also presented this during the investment summit in November, and also to the League of Barangays. The barangays are actually the smallest political unit in the Philippines. So we really have to popularize this disaster resilience scorecard, because we believe that it is not only the function of the LGU to attain resilience in the city, but it's a whole of society approach, so that everybody should be aware of our state of resilience in the city. We also had a strategic planning in December 2022 for the City Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council. So this is a multi-stakeholder council, and we are happy also that even with short notice, we were able to invite Sanjaya presenting online before the council. And we also had these 2 batches of climate change summit, where we also presented this resilience scorecard, and also the actions that we plan, or the plan that we will be doing for this year and the coming years. So on institutional strengthening, because we are very low in our assessment, we had to reconstitute the City Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council to make it more inclusive and to add more to the membership. We created the Baguio City Climate Change Council. And then we had this ongoing updating of the comprehensive land use plan of the city, which will already integrate the disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation. And we started last December last year, and still ongoing, the institutionalization of volunteerism in the local government, because we have to engage also our citizens and through our volunteers. In the mainstreaming of disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation in the local government is quite weak. It's actually very weak, and that we have to present really this state of resilience, so that part of their mainstreaming is already to integrate the result of this resilience scorecard. So early this year, we had this updated local disaster risk reduction and management plan, now covering the 2023 to 2025, and that we actually integrated the 10 essentials as not only our roadmap, but also our strategies for 2023 and the succeeding years. And yes, we have this ongoing updating of the comprehensive land use plan, because this is a long-term plan. So it takes a longer period to prepare. And for the 2023, we have this, we prepared this annual investment program that utilizes 5% of our local revenue in the city. So this amount here actually accounts to 5% of our local revenue, and that goes for disaster risk reduction and management initiatives and projects alone. And we also started promoting nature-based solutions in DRR and CCA. On disaster preparedness, because the last part of the essentials, the 10 essentials, focus on effective disaster response, we conducted these trainings. And as you know, the picture here, we do not only train our employees, but we also train our partners in disaster response. That's why they come in various uniforms. And then we do continuous improvement in our flood early warning system. And yes, we also strengthen partnership with the civil society organizations and volunteer groups. And our office has a mandate of providing trainings and resource persons in various events relative to disaster risk reduction. And so in the implementation of the 2020 annual investment program, we actually distributed the programs, projects, and activities along the 4 thematic areas of disaster risk reduction and management. So first, we have this prevention and mitigation, we have preparedness, we have response, we have rehabilitation and recovery. So all programs, projects, and activities in these 4 thematic areas are funded under this fund allocation we had for 2023. And it's very long already if I will present this, but actually you can, I will show you the website later on so that you can access our website for more information. So this is actually our Baguio City Resilience Vision, which is very much aligned to the MCR. And we are already confident that we are also aligned with the Sendai framework. And so we envision the city of Baguio a safer, adaptive, and disaster resilient Baguio City towards sustainable development. So that's all for my presentation. If you need more information, you are free to visit our website. It's www.cdrrmo.baguio.gov.ph. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sylvia, Sunisa, and Antoinette, for very, very interesting presentation you made. I think it was very good to learn more about Making Cities Resilient 2030 initiative focus, 10 essentials tools, as well as the recent tools on disaster displacement addendum to the scorecard. And I think it all was very nicely wrapped up in the practical application of the scorecard use and results in the example of Baguio City. I think thank you very much for it. And now I would like to invite our next colleague, Ms. Bodoshruti Suthukan, who is Senior Program Coordinator of the Sustainability Management Team in ICLEI of South Asia region. Please, floor is yours.
Am I audible? Thank you, Armin. I will be talking about some tools to support inclusive planning in cities. My name is Vedashruti. I am from ICLEI, South Asia. Just to give a brief introduction about ICLEI, we are an association of local governments working all over the world. And we work in these 5 pathways of low emission development, nature-based development, equitable development, resilient and circular development. So we believe that working in these 5 pathways can actually provide a holistic and a systemic change in the way development is approached by local governments. And so today I will be talking about one of the tools that we have developed on climate resilient cities action plan methodology. Resilience actually has a lot of definitions in literature. What we believe and what we have understood from working in local governments over the past 20 years actually, we have seen that what we think of resilience as climate resilience in local governments is actually a combination of climate change mitigation and climate change adaptation actions. And this is why the tool itself also actually combines 2 of ICLEI's tools. So initially we had separate tools for mitigation planning and adaptation planning. The Green Climate Cities was primarily for low carbon development and urban low carbon development pathway. And the ICLEI ACERN process was another tool which was developed for only climate adaptive planning. And we kind of combined these 2 and formulated our climate resilient cities action plan methodology. And this is an integrated tool covering both mitigation and adaptation planning, but it also looks at implementation of actions. It also looks at bankability and how to go further than just planning. It is a 3 by 3 by 3 process actually. So there are 3 main steps. The first one is analyze, then we move into act, and then we move into accelerate. And under each of these steps, there are 3 sub-steps. And the sub-steps also have sub-sub-steps, 3 sub-sub-steps each. And all of them have tools under these steps so that the city can actually move from one tool to the next, and at the end of the process they can come up with their action plan, and it kind of helps them to prioritize what actions they want to implement and so on. So very briefly about the tool, the first thing that we do in this tool is basically committing and mobilizing. So this is the step where we have all the institutional arrangements ready. The city will have to develop their, they can probably have an announcement by the mayor or by any of the city officials who will announce that the city is interested and is going to prepare an action plan. And that will also ensure that the city allocates some time of their staff. It identifies stakeholders, local stakeholders who are beyond the local government, including maybe NGOs, including if you are a tourist-based city, you can include hotel associations, or if you are an industrial city, you can include industrial associations. So basically local stakeholders who have a stake in your city and who would be either impacted by your decision or who might be able to help you in implementing actions in the long run. So all of those systems being in place, then we move into researching and assessing and kind of have a baseline of the city. We understand what the city is looking like right now. What are the issues with the different systems of the cities, be it for water management, be it for solid waste management? What are the main issues that the city is facing? We also prepare a GHG emissions inventory, which looks at what are the emissions from the different sectors of the city. Again, looking at electricity supply, looking at residential sector, transport, waste, all of these sectors. And we have tools. So we have these simple Excel-based or Word-based tools, which the city can fill up to collect this information. And we use our own in-house software, the Heat Plus software. And based on that, we prepare an emissions inventory for the city. Simultaneously, we also look at climate risk and vulnerability assessment. So this is the place where we identify which areas of the city are facing issues, which population groups are most vulnerable, who are most at risk. We identify which are these systems which are most at risk. For like when we do the baseline assessment, we identify some of the systems that are already at risk. They may already be fragile, and if there is climate impact, then what is the further impact on these systems? So that's their vulnerability. And depending on that, we can prepare these kind of maps and come up with a visual tool which helps the city to plan. And based on the emission inventory, the kind of levels of emissions from the different sectors, the levels of vulnerability that we identify, based on that, we can prepare action plans. So this is basically an identification of interventions where the city identifies a set of actions that they want to implement, which can reduce their vulnerability or which can reduce the emissions from the different sectors. This leads to our project implementation. So most of the projects where we have used this action plan methodology, we have built in pilot projects, but the city more often than not actually puts in these actions in their municipal budget, and they scale up these actions on their own. So this leads to the project implementation part of it, and eventually monitoring and reporting and evaluation of these projects which are implemented, and how do you scale up from there. So that is how the process flows in this action plan methodology. If we look at some of the key outputs, so the first phase of analyze gives us these few outputs. So we have a systems analysis where we identify all the systems which are at risk and how much risk they are. So these are all based on subjective analysis of the different stakeholders. So at each stage, we have to consult with the stakeholders and prepare these kind of reports. We also come up with the vulnerability maps and the emission inventory reports. These are all vetted by the stakeholder group and the core team within the city, within the municipal government. Then moving on, we have from the next phase, the ACT phase, we identify the interventions. So you can see how for each sector we have some examples of resilience interventions. We calculate how much is the potential of mitigation for each of these interventions, or a cumulative mitigation potential also sometimes. What is the overall resilience impact that we foresee if we actually implement all these actions? We have this kind of a table. All of this information actually helps us to prioritize which interventions that the city will undertake eventually, because obviously you cannot implement all the interventions together. And then we also can have demonstration pilots. We can have we can scale up these pilots eventually, and then the city can implement the action plan. Finally, in the accelerate phase, the main outputs is basically on accelerating action. So how do you scale up your interventions that you have implemented or piloted in the city? how do you report globally or regionally? How do you advocate for further local or regional action? So basically increasing the ambition of the CRCAP. The purpose of having this circular tool, if you have seen this picture, the purpose of having this kind of a circular tool is basically to say that every year or every 2 years you can actually review this process and improve upon this process. So that is what the tool is all about. Some of the highlights is that it has been tested in around 4 cities in India and it's been refined repeatedly. We have included this tool or parts of this tool in other management processes also, for instance, for water resource management, for instance, for solid waste management. All of that also we can do. So this tool is quite flexible. It could be adapted into different circumstances also. It is the first tool which is combining both mitigation and adaptation concepts and is pretty user friendly for local governments because all the processes, all the steps that I have told you, each of them has simple tools which are associated with each of these steps. And the idea is that the tool should not, I mean, there should not be or there should at least be as minimal external assistance to the municipality as possible so that the municipality can take it up on their own. It does not to a large extent depend on scientific studies, so there is less strain on the municipalities, and a lot of it depends on planning process which is collaborative, which is including the stakeholders, including the core team. So it's basically a group decision which is taken up. Some of the case studies just to showcase where we have implemented this kind of a tool. We've done that in different cities in India. And some of the projects that have been taken up after the preparation of this action plan. In Siliguri, there's an acoustic water leak detection project which was taken up, which has reduced leakages. So it basically helps to identify where the leakages in the water pipeline are without actually having to dig up the road. So it helps to reduce effort, it saves money, it saves effort of the municipality and so on. Solid waste was a major project in 2 of our cities, in Coimbatore, in Udaipur, where we have helped the cities to identify how to move towards zero waste with recycling, with reusing, and both organic and inorganic waste. Groundwater recharge systems have been introduced in Rajkot. Ambient air quality monitoring systems in 2 cities in Bangladesh. This is Narayanganj. There was rooftop solar PV pilots also introduced. In another project, we have used in Rajshahi in Bangladesh. Again, these are river embankment slopes. So these are plantations which were done to strengthen the embankments. We've used energy efficiency retrofitting in the corporation buildings. So all these kind of interventions, these are small interventions which were showcased, and then the city kind of piloted it and scaled it up on their own. One thing which I would also like to highlight is that there is also a concept of social inclusion which was included in this resilience planning methodology. So the reason why we included this is basically because we understand that people experience climate change differently. A lot of the planning is done at the municipal government level and not necessarily taking into consideration all the different marginalized populations, the different groups which are actually impacted either by the decisions or by climate change. So what we understood is that also there are differences in roles and responsibilities of men and women. There's differences in inequality, in rights, in their access to resource, in their voices. So all of that is there. And if we do not include all these groups into the holistic plan, then it also impacts our achievement of the SDGs, because the leaving no one behind principle of the SDGs is a very basic concept which we need to adhere to if we want to actually achieve our SDG goals. So this is a very small way in which we have we've kind of integrated how we can have social inclusion included into our resilience planning methodology. I will just run through these points and let you know. So we start with this understanding of people's needs, and this is also something which we do in our resilience planning methodology, which is the first step of baseline assessment. So where we are identifying what the issues are in the urban systems, that is where we need to start looking at that how is this impacting the different social groups within the city. And from there we move on to assessing inclusive solutions. So when we are actually identifying actions, so once we have done with our emissions inventory and once we are done with our vulnerability assessment, so in the vulnerability assessment, when we are identifying who are the vulnerable groups, how are they impacted, all of that will actually feed into your inclusive solutions. When you are identifying interventions that will mitigate your climate impacts, that should also look at your inclusivity. That should look at whether it is creating jobs for the different social groups, whether it is including women in the planning processes, in the implementing processes. The third thing which we need to look at is that when we are identifying interventions, we should also understand what kind of what the local context is. In many instances, there are small actions which the population themselves take because they need to adapt to a certain change which has already happened. And this kind of traditional knowledge, this kind of community-based knowledge is not necessarily always reported or written down, but the knowledge is there within these communities, and therefore it is very essential to involve these communities in the larger planning processes, either through your stakeholder groups or through involving NGOs maybe who are working in these communities, or even the political people, even the councillors from these local communities who can then actually suggest that these kind of solutions are existing and can be scaled up at the city level. The fourth point is committing an equity responsive budget, and this is something which is very important. So the understanding the issues and identifying the solutions is not enough. Cities need to commit a budget to implementing these solutions, and this is extremely important to do right at the beginning. It is possible to include it at later stages once the project has been started, but it becomes more and more difficult to do it at later stages. So it is essential that you already identify inclusive solutions, you already allocate budget to implement these kind of inclusive solutions. And finally, once the actions are implemented, you would need to monitor the outcomes of the project. So not just whether it is reducing your emissions or whether it is giving you the resilience benefit or not, but also the equity-based outcomes of the project. So how is it actually improving the improving the social outcomes, social aspects within the city, and how it is actually improving social inclusion in urban development. So I think this is where I will stop, and I'd welcome any questions, or if there is any comments, please feel free to contact me if you need more information.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dr. Khan. It was a very interesting presentation, and thank you for sharing ICLEI practical experience in climate resilient city action plan preparation process and methodology, and specifically on how to use and apply multiple stakeholder engagement approach in this process. I think that was very interesting. Thank you very much. And I would like to invite our next speaker. It's Dr. Muhammad Helmi Abidin, who is Disaster Risk Reduction Coordinator at the UCLG ASPAC. Please, floor is yours.
Thank you, Armen, for the time, and good afternoon, everyone. Let me share the screen here. I hope it works. Yeah, allow me to thank the host of the webinar, and especially UNDRR together with AID and others colleagues and panelists here. I see that our sister organization, ICLE, and also others local government who presents the practices. And UCLG ASPAC stand for like, I would like to share regarding the building resilience at the local level, because of we develop our own learning module and to support the MCR 2030. And yeah, before I will introduce what is the UCLG Asia Pacific. So basically, UCLG Asia Pacific is one of the regional section of UCLG. So UCLG is a new form of EULA, was established in 1913, and also with the new form of UCLG was established in 2004, and together we known as the biggest association of local government in the world, and we have a more than 7,000 local governments network in the Pacific itself. And next, yeah, role of the local government in disaster reduction. So I want to just share a bit about what's the role of local government in disaster. It's more on the LG can contribute to more on effective and accountable international governance if LGs are recognized as a sphere of government and given a set at the global table. Because of UCLG roles at the UN level, we promote, we share the practices, and also kind of like on the SDGs target. And for the DRR, we also emphasize that local government must understand what the needs and be able to target the resources effectively, and also foster participation, because of not only from the policy aspect, also until the planning and also budgeting process. So that's the main intention of this organization, to support the local government in order to increase the accountability and also the fiscal decentralization. And the second one is more on the leadership role in developing and implementing the DRR local strategy to implement the sendai framework for disaster reduction. We also support city to develop their local action plan together, like we had before with UNDRR on the scorecard assessment, and also develop the local action plan. And we know that local government and their association is also important. So because of they are the one who drive the national development from the bottom up level, to build the national like responsibility. And also we want to have a more engagement with different stakeholders, and provide a platform not only in the regional level but also at the national level. We know that those risks are getting higher, and also those impact at the city level is very crucial. As a previous presentation from ICLE, we know that those action need to be done at the local level. So therefore a national strategy can be achieved subsequently based on the national needs, based on the local needs. This is what we support. So UCLG ASPAC support for the Sendai framework or localization is more on the, we contribute not only the Sendai but also how we connect with those 2030 global agenda, including Paris Agreement on climate, new urban agenda, and also Addis Ababa for financing is one of the main global framework that we promote and we mainstream at the local level. We do more advocacy through the MCR 2030. We use the platform of MCR 2030, and also we are the coordinator of the local government association in the region to get the APLG and UNDRR, ICLE, C40 are part of the APLG body. So we promote this kind of advocacy through the regional platform like APMCDRR and also up to the global platform to raise the local needs and also the local concern regarding the DRR. And also we build the awareness raising as well, reach out the wider local government and stakeholders on the importance of the Sendai framework. And also the most important thing is on the capacity building. We want to enable not only the local government but also the association. Some, like the previous one, we had a collaboration with the CLGF in the Pacific and others to promote the MCR 2030, and also on the scorecard assessment workshop and development. So also we establishing the linkages between city to city cooperation, because we know that during the emergency or disaster, sometimes city need to have a more strong collaboration and solidarity among themselves. As we know that we promote some solidarity initiative like supported by the city itself, because of city during the COVID-19 pandemic, there was some practices regarding the city solidarity among themselves to support other city who are in need. So this is one of the capacity buildings that we have conducted before, right after MCR 2030, because we are based in Jakarta, Indonesia. So we have very close relation with Indonesia National Disaster Agency, like BNPB. So we involved on the first is 2 provinces on the Bali and Central Java for the MCR 2030 workshop. And also we connect the disaster management plan into their local action plan. I think this is most important. We have to strengthen the vertical integration between national and local government, so they can minimize the gap what the planning is at the national level, and also should be understand at the local level. This is the one of the most important. We also facilitated the capacity buildings on the formulating the DRR local strategy and also others strategic document. And we also have some workshop on the resilience training of trainers using our modules. I will later explain a bit what the UCLG learning module on resiliency. Here is more basically because of that during the pandemic, everybody were at home, and so there's some limitation on the mobilization. So we developed this kind of learning module, and it now is can be accessed online. So the first testing was with Maguindanao province in the Philippines. So we supported the province of Maguindanao to develop their local plan on the DRR. So the most important thing is how they can engage multi-stakeholders to talk and to discuss regarding the plan itself. So this is the most important things that we organize for the training. And this is the last virtual roadshow, because of COVID-19 was not very it was not only reason that we cannot do offline, but through the virtual roadshow MCR 2030 in Indonesia is one of the example that we can show that we can reach more than 100 cities for MCR 2030 workshop in Indonesia, and together with local government association, which is out more than 100 cities there. And this is we know that champion city is very important. We have Makati city here, we have Baguio city, we have other city in the region that need to be, given chance to promote their practices, then inspire other city to have a similar action on the MCR 2030. We know that according to the update of the dashboard, that in this region is more than 543 has joined the MCR 2030. And yeah, this is the learning module that we have. Feel free to, you can check online on the website, UCLG Learning. We have two on the localizing SDGs, and others is more on the resilience. For the volume 1 is more on the fundamental of resilient governance, and the volume 2 of the learning is more on the strategy and action. This is part of our commitment to provide a service on the dashboard. So depend on the city, and if they can, if they have already identified the level of which level of the resiliency, they can have we can support them on this development, like a join the learning forum. And this is the learning.uclg. So basically what will you learn is how to respond and to possible challenges that are adapted to the needs of the local and territorial contents. And they can learn also about the key actors, sectors, and resources to consider for the development of the RR strategy. And they can also how to manage the urban system, taking into account their basic service facilities and private land management instruments. So basically, it's not only about understand what is the risk, but also how they can link those into the planning, and how locals can also strategically plan their city as well as rural, and how to enhance the resilience by preparing for the response to potential challenges. This is an online course, is for free and can be accessed online. Yeah, this is the brief information about the resilience module. Actually, this module was developed by together with UN Habitat, UNDRR, and UCLG. And for the whole, there are 3 chapters. The first is more on the localizing Sendai framework, really basics about introductions, what is the disaster reduction resilience, and what is the resilience. It's more on the introduction. Second is more on the fundamental on urban resilience principles and policy circles. And the third chapter is more on the fostering enabling environment, and 2 local regional association. So it's more on the local government association, what the local government association can support their cities, their members. And this is the overall into the 3 days agenda of the training. Maybe if every city can join for free for that. So yeah, I think I'm gonna finish right now, Armen. If there is any questions or discussion further, looking forward to having that. Thank you so much. Armen, I think you are muted.
Oh, sorry. I just would like to thank you very much, Helmi, for your presentation and highlighting UCLG methodology and approach to strengthen cities' resilience with specific focus in Asian Pacific region, as well as your engagement and contribution to the Making Cities Resilient 2030 Global Initiative. Thank you very much. Before introducing our next distinguished speaker, I just would like to address one of the comments you were putting. To find this question and answer box, it is on the lower right part of your screen. There are these dots. Please click on these dots. It will open the box to post your questions, and our speakers would be happy to answer to your questions. So with this in mind, I would like to welcome our next distinguished speaker, and we have with us Dr. Cecilia Schmolzer, who is Senior Officer for Urban Preparedness and Response with International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. Dr. Schmolzer, the floor is yours.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak in this forum, and thank you very much also to the the previous presenters who have shared all these super interesting and inspiring presentations. So let me just bring up my presentation. I hope it is visible. Okay, I assume it's visible. I can see. Okay. So the example that I wanted to share today is really, well, maybe first, well, yeah, just to add to the introduction, thank you, Armin, but I'm the Senior Officer for Urban Resilience and Response at the Federation in Geneva, but I'm also covering the Asia region at this moment. So this is why I'm here. And so I wanted to share this example of how the Philippines Red Cross, together with the partner, the Zurich Flood Resilience Alliance, has managed to support the local government of the Pasig and Pateros municipalities to increase and support their community resilience in the particular vulnerable communities. So the project was actually implemented in 4 barangays of the city of Pasig and 3 barangays of the city of Pateros, covering a population of a bit over 221,000 inhabitants. And those communities are alongside the Pasig River, so they're very much experiencing flooding. Of course, the number of populations is too high to do that on an individual level. So there was a focus on certain identified communities, or maybe to say target groups, that were considered of particular interest or concern. So obviously the ones in the most flood affected areas, that was derived from the disaster risk mapping, like the flood risk mapping. But also really looking at informal settlers, given that they have very particular vulnerabilities as well. Other vulnerable groups that included senior citizens, people with disabilities, but also single parents. And another focus group was also the micro, small, and medium enterprises, given that they're considered as very important for the resilience of the overall community. I just want to run through very briefly the methodology that was used, because I'm also a bit conscious of time. I have a following commitment. So the Zurich Flood Alliance has been working on this flood resilience measurement tool for communities. And together, so basically they have 44 indicators, the so-called sources of resilience, and they are then viewed through the lenses of the 5 capitals: human, social, physical, natural, and financial, as well as the 4 property of a resilient system, which is a robustness, redundancy, resourcefulness, and rapidity. So those are all derived from the resilience systems thinking. You're probably aware of those approaches. And I will not go more into detail into that. I'm just giving you an overview of the 44 criteria, the 44 sources that then will be, actually they will be gathered into an app, I mean through an app, and entered into an online database, which then will apply a numeric score, and then also the enumerators and sort of trained teams of assessors will give a grade. So we have a mix of quantitative and qualitative evaluation. Just to show you a little bit how it will look like. So for each of the 44 indicators, there will be this numeric score and then also the grade, which is given by the assessors. So I don't want to go more into detail. It's just sort of to give you the impression that is a very solid evidence-based methodology that was applied. The data collection was done by trained Red Cross volunteers using household surveys, key informant interviews, focus group discussions, and then of course adding secondary data that was already available at the municipalities. The analysis of those results were communicated back to the local governments then, and also to the targeted communities to give to have a discussion and also a validation of those analyses. And then following up, the Red Cross facilitated workshops with those targeted communities. We call it, using a tool we call EVCA. It's an enhanced vulnerability and capacity assessment, And in those workshops, the targeted communities then develop measures that would address the identified weaknesses in their resilience that have been identified with the other tool, the flood resilience measurement tool. And I think what was really interesting in this project was that we worked quite a lot also to harmonize those two tools. So the first tool really to assess the overall level of resilience, establish a baseline, and then going further and working really in detail with the affected communities to develop their own interventions, how they want to increase and improve their resilience. And basically now, and then they identify those activities, and they are now being rolled out to strengthen their resilience in 1-year plans. And basically then after a second circle, we can again run the measurement tool to see to what extent this resilience has increased. So I think that is a very interesting approach, and I think that could also merit from what I've seen so many tools already existing that have been presented today, that maybe we can try to harmonize a bit more to make them much more complementary, those tools. I think there is a lot of room there. Also now in this project, what was really quite critical is that there was a dialogue platform established that linked the government and with the community members, also bringing in other NGOs that were working in the areas. And some of the Philippines Red Cross volunteers from those barangays were actually trained to then become also members of the Barangay Flood Resilience Committee, which will also now follow up on those planned interventions. Some other interesting things is that, there was a few basic interventions that were funded through this project, but then also the governments, the local governments provided technical and financial support to implement those activities. And they were also connected with ongoing initiatives that were already running, like early warning, early action protocols being established, and also a Red Cross project that was looking at forecast-based financing and other DRR initiatives that were ongoing. So just bringing all of that together on this platform and making sure that they all communicate. And that is all that I just in a nutshell wanted to present about this project. Just some basic conclusions and a bit of an outlook is, I think one of the really interesting outcomes is that it seems like the evidence that has been gathered to this tool has also really been instrumental and useful in strengthening a vertical integration between really the community needs up to subnational and national resilience policies. So this data and this information has been taken into account. And I just wanted to mention that we had a similar program also with the Nepal Red Cross Society and the Zurich Flood Resilience Alliance, which has also resulted in similar developments and actually also the development of a municipal risk governance tool, which is now being successfully embedded at the national level via a community-based disaster risk management platform as well. So I think those are very encouraging results, and we would really like to take this forward. Also, the Zurich Flood Resilience Alliance is working on that tool to include more climate-related hazards. So the next version of this tool will be the climate resilience measurement tool for communities, including also hazards like heat waves, wildfires, and maybe some more that they're working on. So they are piloting these new approaches. And with that, I think I want to come to an end with my presentation on this project. I just want to give you a very quick overview or kind of a heads up also to just say and confirm that the Red Cross and Red Crescent movement is really committed on investing more in urban resilience. In June past year, we had our biannual Council of Delegates meeting, and that meeting actually adopted a resolution on building the resilience of urban communities, our way forward. It means that the whole Red Cross movement, so all the 193 national societies, as well as the IFRC as a secretariat, are committed to scaling up work in urban areas, working much more closely with the city and municipal governments. And yes, and really investing also in our own capacity building and in the capacity building of vulnerable communities. So yeah, fully supportive also of, I think, the 5 points that Dr. Yoshida mentioned at the beginning of this webinar. And just to conclude that definitely Red Cross, Red Crescent are ready to support all these efforts. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Schmolzer. Thank you for very interesting presentation and sharing your experience in two municipalities of Pateros and Pasig in Metro Manila city, as well as 44 sources of resilience. I think that was very interesting, and I see already questions coming from our participants um, asking about if there are any online trainings or TOTs. But I think, yeah, please, I encourage all participants to put your question. And I know that we are a little bit running out of the time, but I would like to invite, last but not least, presenters for today's webinar, Dr. Chintaka Ganepola, who is Urban Risk Management Specialist at the Asian Disaster Preparedness Center. Mr. Ganepola, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Armin, and good morning and good afternoon to you all. And thank you very much for giving the opportunity to take part in this interesting webinar. And thanks to all other speakers also who did very interesting presentations. So bear with me a few seconds till I share my presentation. Okay. So hope it is visible to you all. And I will be speaking on one of the urban resilience initiatives which Asian Disaster Preparedness Center is currently implementing in Vietnam. So before moving on, let me give a brief description about our organization, ADPC. ADPC is an international organization with a vision to reduce disaster risk and climate risk impacts on the communities and countries in the Asia and Pacific by working with governments, civil societies, international organizations, and donor agencies, etc. And our strategic focuses, they vary from urban resilience, climate resilience, and health risk management and resilient recovery, and also with cross-cutting themes such as gender and diversity, regional and transboundary cooperation, and poverty and livelihoods. Before diving into our urban resilience initiative, let's have just a glance to understand why urban areas they are at risk. So we know that the urban population, the urban global population, is rising day by day, and especially by looking at this first graph, you can understand that especially in the Asian region, the Asia will have the highest global the urban population by 2050. And now if you look at the number of urban disasters which cities are experiencing, we can see that Asia, especially Asia, is experiencing higher number of hydrological and meteorological disaster events than the rest of the regions. So it is probable that the cities in the Asia, they are very much at risk due to climate extremes. And these are some of the climate risks in Asian cities put forward in the 6th assessment report by IPCC. So some of the key risks are floods, sea level rise, heat urban island effect, extreme rain, and drought. The ADPC's Urban Resilience Initiative, it's called Urban Resilience to Climate Extremes in Southeast Asia. It's simply called URCE, and we are implementing this regional program with the funding support from Norwegian Agency for Development Cooperation. And the program goal is to enhance the resilience of urban communities and urban systems to current and emerging climate extremes. And our approach consists of 4 outcomes, or four key actions. First is improving multi-hazard and early warning systems. And second is strengthening urban community readiness. And third, improving urban sectoral preparedness. And fourth, strengthening the urban risk governance systems for dealing with climate extremes and emergencies. And we are using 13 indicators adopted from the City Resilience Index, which was developed by Arup and Rockefeller Foundation to evaluate the improvement of resilience to climate extremes by the end of our initiative. And at last, with the completion of activities of this program, we are disseminating and we are sharing our knowledge generated in this project through a global audience, through regional and international events and forums. Okay, so we are implementing this initiative, this urban resilience initiative, in 2 pilot cities in Vietnam. One is Mito City, which is to the south, located in the Mekong River Delta. And the other city is called Nam Dinh City, which is to the north and located in the Red River Delta, to the Red River Delta. So both are coastal cities. So first, in each of the cities, we are implementing our activities to achieve our first outcome, which is improved knowledge on climate change and strengthening end-to-end multi-hazard early warning systems. So in that, under this first key action, we are conducting comprehensive climate risk assessments, incorporating future climate scenarios. So there, once these risk assessments are done, the city authorities will get to know how the hazard will behave in future and what would be the risk would be. And also to supplement that, we are again strengthening the impact-based forecasting and warning system as well within the cities. So the city authorities will be able to identify what would be the impact before happening the disaster event, and that would be very much beneficial for them to be better prepared once the disaster event happens. And also we are developing one web-based tool called Mobilize. It's a risk visualization tool. So once it is developed, all the users can overlay different hazard layers and also different layers of elements at risk, and can see the spatial distribution of impact or the risk which the city will experience in future in future climate scenarios. So this tool, it will be very much useful for city authorities or at the time of making decisions or in city action planning. Then moving into our second key action, which is improving urban community preparedness. So here we are focusing on vulnerable communes and wards within the city. And we expect to increase the capacity of commune and ward level stakeholders to cope up with the risk and enhance the inclusive resilience by conducting community-based disaster risk management training programs. And also we expect to strengthen the system of people participation in the decision-making process within the commune and a ward, because people are very much important in the decision-making process. And also we are assisting them in the development of local action plans, and also we are conducting a constant training program to develop a cadre of urban community resilience trainers in those 2 cities. And the third key action is improving sectoral preparedness. So there we are focusing on health. We are focusing on 4 key sectors, which is health, wash, and transport and energy. And also we have conducted capacity building workshop on sectoral preparedness. And this is one example where we conducted one workshop in Hanoi, Vietnam, where the participants, they came up with their dream city after explaining, after we provide them recommendations for strengthening the resilience of the key sectors against climate extremes. And the last action, it is the strengthening of urban governance mechanisms. So there we are providing recommendations for strengthening the city's existing urban governance tools and functions for enhancing urban climate resilience. And also we are developing guidance documents on infrastructure planning and also on urban recovery and redevelopment. Before I conclude my presentation, I just wanted to share some of the experiences what we had. I mean, this is a program, this is an initiative which is currently ongoing in Vietnam. And these are some of the experiences what we learned during the implementation of this program, that an urban area cannot become climate change resilient by a single activity. Instead, resilience is acquired through a series of activities that needs to be progressed over time. And in doing so, lessons learned from the past matters a lot. And such lessons should be used to inform the present and future actions in the path towards resilience. Okay, so with that, I conclude my presentation, and thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing ADPC experience and with specific focus in Vietnam. I highly appreciate it. And now I would like to open floor for this question and answer session. I already see there are many questions were posted, and thanks to our speakers. I think most of them were addressed. But please use question and answer box to put your questions. We'll be happy to answer. I see the question which is still not answered. It's from Marilena Hitfields, who says that a lot of great tools have been mentioned. Is there any kind of overview or decision guidance for cities when to choose which tool? I would like to open the floor for question and answer session and invite our speakers who wants to pick up this one and answer to this question.
Yeah,
and
I can.
yeah, before thank you, Sunisa. Before Sunisa will answer, I would like also to encourage our participants, if you have questions to specific speaker, please kindly mention it to us. If not, we'll take it as a question to all and we'll try to answer to your questions. Thank you. Sunisa, please.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I can answer that. Well, it's not like any decision guidance, but it's also like up to cities, like to start like contacting like us, like as MCR RCC like members like of the MCR. For example, if like your city want to start like working on like the plan, we just like contacting like UNDRR, because like we can also like provide like guidance on like to developing plan, like Antoinette sharing with you, or in case like if you want to learn more about like the climate action, so you can also like contact IGLI South Asia, contact Shruti. And like in terms of cities, so all of like these tools, which is like the sample of that, you can also find out from MCR dashboard. You can see like not only like our tools that we show today, but there's also a lot of tools, also like from partners, also from other cities, from Resilience Hub, that they are willing to share and can learn from. So it's also like up to your city priorities and need on which aspect that you want to focus on. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Sunisa. Antoinette, do you want to contribute? I see to this question.
Yes, I would like to add that it's really very difficult to gather data from our key stakeholders, especially when it comes to the disaster risk reduction and management data, as well as the climate change data. So for the Philippines, actually we have this guidebook from the Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development that mentions about the guideline on mainstreaming disaster risk reduction and management. So before even making a climate or disaster lens in your plans, you should always start with climate and disaster risk assessment. So this guideline that we use in the local government is very useful. This is where we take off actually, because from the climate and disaster risk assessment, we were able to identify or inventory the hazards, the susceptibility, the vulnerability and the risk. So it is very important that you gather those related data first and come up with your baseline data on climate and disaster risk.
Thank you, Antoinette. Any other speakers wants to contribute to this question? Okay, I encourage our participants to post more questions, and while you are posting your questions in Q&A box, I would like to kindly ask you to take a minute. My colleague Charina already shared a few times the link to the online evaluation form. Please also use your time it will take 1 minute of your time to complete it. It's online form, so please kindly use this chance also to provide your feedback and recommendations. We would appreciate it enormously. Yeah, please, if there are any other questions, please kindly post them in Q&A box.
Armen, may I? I actually shared in the chat box the link where you can access the guideline which I mentioned, but that is on the climate and disaster risk assessment for you to come up with the baseline information. So from there, you can already integrate the making cities resilient, the 10 essentials, if you are going to prepare your plan without any framework, prescribed framework given to you yet. So it's really a very good start for you to work on that climate and disaster risk assessment before you even and then you integrate this Sendai framework, the climate, these 10 essentials under the making cities resilient.
Thank you, Antoinette. Just to echo Antoinette, there are our speakers posted in the chat box a lot of links to all these tools, methodologies, materials. Please kindly use these links to access all these tools and guidelines. I think that's something you can find as very interesting, and that these are the tools they used and shared in their presentation. Just to answer to one of other questions, all presentations also will be available. You can upload the PDF version of presentation in the web page of this webinar. Our colleague will post them all there. So they, I think one of the questions was if you can have access to the presentations. So the answer is yes, and you can upload them from RCEP website. I think Charina shared the link, but yeah, she can also share the link and send it to you via emails if needed. Okay, let me see if we have. Okay, we have two more questions. One is from Marie-Lena Hatfield. Thank you, Marie-Lena. The question is a lot of. Oh, I think that's we already addressed. No more questions. So no more questions. So please, if you have, please post them, and thank you for your kind words of congratulations and encouragement. We highly appreciated it. And if no more questions, I think I would like to invite for a very short closing remark Dr. Ramesh Sayosa, who is head of climate change and disaster risk resilient cluster at the AIT Regional Resource Center for Asia Pacific. Dr. Sayosa, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Armen, and good afternoon, good morning, good evening to wherever you are. It's a privilege to be here, and very nice to hear all this good work that has been done. I'm really happy to do this closing remarks. It's a big honor for me. I will be the incoming head of the climate change cluster in RRCAP, and I look forward to working with all of you very closely. Before I close and wrap up, I'd like to pretty much take this opportunity again to share that AIT RRCAP has recently developed 2 new e-learning videos. One is on increasing coherence in climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction, mainly on climate adaptation. And the second one is resilience building through sustainable waste and resource management as a contribution to the Asia Pacific Adaptation Information Platform, or better known as AP-PLAT. Thanks to the support and collaboration of the Ministry of Environment of Japan and the Institute for Global Environmental Strategies. The videos will be made available shortly via the AP-PLAT website soon. Now, I'm pleased to make a few closing remarks on behalf of AITRRCAP. I have been following the progress of this Making Cities Resilient 2030 initiative with keen interest and would like to express my sincere gratitude with its success in facilitating the MCR 2030 in the region. At this midterm review, you have all presented your wonderful achievements, and I've been awestruck pretty much with respect to the wonderful work that has been done, shared, as with respect to MCR 2030. We have discussed how to overcome challenges, confirmed action plans for the next steps. And also, as you rightly pointed out at the very beginning, cities are the epicenters of vulnerability to disaster risks. And thus, we shared lessons learned today, experiences, and best practices with the wonderful presentations done. So I greatly appreciate the participations of our MCR 2030 partners, namely United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, Local Government for Sustainability, United Cities and Local Government, Asian Disaster Preparedness Center. I would also like to acknowledge the important participation of the cities and relevant stakeholders in the region who have joined us for this webinar, and thank the Ministry of Environment very much, the Government of Japan, for their support. I thank you all for having taken time from your busy schedules to contribute to our joint effort to strengthen cities' resilience in Asia and the Pacific, in the Asia-Pacific region. Thank you very much.
Just to join to these words and say a big thank you to all distinguished speakers and to all participants for your time, for your active participation, and for your valuable contribution and very interesting questions. I would wish you to all to have very good rest of the day. Thank you and have a good day. Bye.